All right.
Great.
Thank you so much, John.
No problem.
Okay, so now I have the chat room open, and so if anybody has any questions while I'm talking, please feel free to put them in the chat, and if I can, I'll try and address them in real time. Sometimes it's more relevant than waiting until the end of the lecture to have that question addressed, and I think it can be helpful for the group also. So today I'm going to be talking about something that I'm actually really excited about. And I appreciate the introduction, just to give a little bit more color to my practice is I really went into medicine hoping to be a healer and got very disillusioned with my conventional training because I felt like to some degree my hands at some point became kind of tied behind my back around managing disease rather than really healing people from it. And therein came the passion around nutrition and lifestyle medicine and seeing the amazing benefits that changing our diet and changing our lifestyle can have on our well-being and on our disease trajectory. Um, but even in that, my husband and I are partners in our business practice, and we have been since the very beginning of our journey. And it's been wonderful because we're able to kind of use each other, like ping pong off each other to kind of check in and say, hey, how are we doing? We got the nutrition, we're doing as best we can with our lifestyle. And at some point we realized, well, you know what? There's still things that are not quite right, even though we've optimized the things that most people connect to optimal health, which is our sleep. We're getting 8 hours, check. We're getting our exercise in daily. We're eating a whole food plant-based diet, and being very healthy in that space. And yet we're not as optimized as we wish that we would be. And that's what kind of led us to this path of the 9 pillars. And we're going to get more specifically into what those are. Um, but as we go through the lecture, one of the things that I want people to be listening to is just the 9 pillars are an intention for us to hold a mindfulness and awareness around areas in our lives that when we pay attention to them, we can elevate our experience, take us from illness to wellness, all the way up to wonderful. And why isn't wellness enough? Well, wellness has kind of become this ubiquitous phrase that we hear all the time. I'm well, I feel well, I'm doing well. But it's almost become a baseline that to some degree isn't anywhere near optimization for our overall health and well-being. What I hope to do in my life is to wake up every morning and not just feel well or good enough, but really feel like, you know what? Even through life's ups and downs, I'm feeling pretty wonderful. So let's take that journey together. The first question I always get is, well, why should I care? I feel good. If you're living your best life, if you can take inventory and say, I wouldn't change a thing, then maybe this is not relevant for you. But everyone else, everyone that says, you know what? I could feel better. I want to feel a little bit better. I could be optimizing different areas of my life. I could pay a little more attention to X, Y, or Z. Then those are the people that I invite to stay tuned. So many of us are living in what we call survival mode, basically fight, flight, or freeze. We're burning the candle at both ends. There's constant stress and exhaustion. We go from thing to thing to thing. We've become human doings over human beings, as John Kabat-Zinn likes to say, where we're constantly doing From the moment we get up, we have our checklist of things that we do. We get up, we exercise, we go to our job, we come back from our job, we take care of our family or take care of ourselves, we maybe hop over to another job. And then by the time we get to bed, we're exhausted. We really get to burnout. In that survival mode, something happens in our physiology. A scarcity mentality is born. Survival mode really is our basic life purpose is to survive. And it becomes a survival of the fittest. When we survive, we're self-focused. We're focused on how do we make it through this day. We are nowhere near thriving. We are nowhere near optimized, but we're surviving. When we're in that survival of the fittest, our mentality goes to there's not enough to go around. It's a scarcity. So in that scarcity, the only way to increase my chances are for me to chase more. I want more. More offers me a security, and maybe a false sense of security, but a sense of security nonetheless. The more I have, the more shelter, the more resources, the more money, the better job, the bigger house, the more I feel like I have some insulation from this scarcity mentality. The more I have, the more I increase my chances to survive. But more is a never-ending game, because when does more end? It doesn't. There's always the opportunity for more. I can always have more. And the impact on our health and our well-being of constantly chasing more is significant. What happens is that living in survival mode, it presents it prevents a sense of safety. It actually presents a sense of danger, and that over time manifests as disease. Now, the challenge here is that we are innately programmed to seek out danger. And it makes sense in our environment, right? For our ancestors, it served a purpose. When they're out foraging for food and they see the tiger coming at them, they don't want to start thinking, oh, what should I do? Does the tiger look hungry? Is the tiger, maybe he wants to be friends. Maybe he's just going to run past me. No, they see the tiger running, danger, fight or flight. They want to move. They want to run. This is not the time to think or analyze or rationalize or anything of the sort. We're programmed that way, and our brains continue to scan for danger. We have to actively put on a safety brake to take us from our sympathetic fight, flight, or freeze to our parasympathetic rest, digest, and thrive. When we're chasing more, when we're seeing the world's resources as scarce, when we're feeling chronically stressed to get what is ours, it's a signal of danger. That danger elicits the sympathetic system, the fight, flight, or freeze. A chronic sense of danger eventually leads to disease. This is because all types of threats are physiologically and chemically identical. For our ancestors, what happened was they saw the tiger, they ran from the tiger, they got to safety, they had an extinction burst of their stress, and they were able to recover, recoup, and get better. So the stress, because stress in and of itself is not a bad thing, it's actually necessary, but it goes up and down, right? We have that burst of stress, and then we're able to recover. What's happening right now is physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual threats. They all are causing the same response in our body. But when we go beyond running from an actual tiger to getting that same stimulation when we're even anticipating seeing a tiger, when we fear the thought of the possibility of being in the room with that tiger, that's a stress that stays with us constantly. It doesn't leave. And that constant stress, the inability to recover, leads to that sense of danger, which leads to an inflammatory cascade in our system. On a cellular, chemical, and neurological level, we incite an inflammatory cascade. And that chronic inflammation eventually leads to disease, and it affects all our organ systems. Many of us, on some, even if you don't know the extent that we just talked about today, there's an inherent awareness around the danger of staying in fight, flight, or freeze all the time. There's a knowing of the benefits of eliciting the parasympathetic response, the relaxation response, the rest, digest, and thrive response. We cannot live in fight, flight, or freeze all the time. We will eventually burn out. So we know what fight, and flight feels like. We know that chronic stress is harmful to our health. And we know the benefits of stress reduction, and we aim to implement it in a variety of different ways. But still, even with the buzzword, oh, let's reduce our stress, reduce your stress, be mindful, be aware, be present, so many of us still remain stressed. And this is not just us now, it's the younger generations as well. And at a younger age, there's this, the stress it takes its toll, and it's taking its toll at younger and younger and younger ages. So what do we do about it? What do we do when we know the things that we're doing in our lives right now are not working and that we need to make a shift? But the buzzwords that we're hearing, mindfulness, stress reduction, it's not cutting it. Somehow it's not we're not getting clear enough, or it's not resonating into our systems in a way that's actually impacting health and wellness, right? And that can be on a variety of different planes. It can be in our foods. So many of us know what we should be eating and what we shouldn't be eating. And yet taking that from the theoretical to the practical is a really big step. And for a lot of people, the step that they continue to struggle with despite knowing. So it's not about knowing, right? It's not about knowing what we need to do. It's about how do we actually get to a space where we can, when we're resourced enough, regulated enough, and connected enough to actually impact and make change. And what we like to do at We Heal is, and this is where the 9 pillars are, they're presented as an infinity loop. And the reason that they're presented as an infinity loop is because they all interact with one another. So there is a connection with all of them. And I'll give you the 9 pillars first, and then we'll talk about how they're connected. So there's at the core of the 9 pillars is the self, and we're going to get into each one of these individually, but there's the self, sleep, nutrition, activity, play. That is our internal world, what we like to call our opportunity for resourcing, the things that we can do ourselves to optimize our own health and well-being. And then there's the external world, the world of our friends, our family, our work, our spirituality, our natural world, those things that make up our environment and our most important relationships. At the core of that is regulation, resourcing, and connection. And they're placed in very specific places. So regulation starts with self. How do we help our nervous system feel less nervous, feel more safe? How do we apply that safety brake when we're so apt to scan for danger? You really want to downregulate your threat response and increase your body's sense of safety and calm. This helps you go from that first picture of fear and frustration, our worries, our stress, our anxieties, our doubts, whatever we're holding on to that is eliciting that fight, flight, or freeze, to calm, safe, love, happiness, joy, trust, peace, right? That is the active safety brake that's coming. Safety can happen in a variety of different ways. Our brain can tell our body can tell our brain. So it's a real bidirectional flow. Um, so we can tell, okay, if I just take 5 breaths, let me try mindfulness or breathing or meditation, or we can smile. And when we smile, we send our brain the message, oh, okay, I'm smiling. I wouldn't be smiling if there were a tiger here. So I'm smiling because I actually feel safe. A soft gaze in our eyes tells our brain, okay, I'm safe. We don't do that if we're glaring at a tiger, our eyes are bugging out and we're trying to decide where to run. Our neck muscles, when we notice them and can kind of feel them loosening up, softening, relaxing, that sends our body a message of safety. That tells us it's okay to relax. Versus, and I imagine many of us can relate to, we come home from a long day or a stressful day, and our body is so tight. Our shoulders are up, and we may not even notice it. Our neck is tight. That neck tension and tightness leads to headaches, jaw pain, so many different things. One thing that I really love is, and that I find really helpful, actually, 2 things. One is deep breathing, because I can do it anywhere. And the other is touch. One of our favorite techniques for regulation and safety, and we do this in our family, we call it 5-finger breathing. And it can be done anywhere, and it can be done really quickly. And what it is you can put up your hand and you trace your fingers. And as you trace your fingers, because touch is also one of those indicators of safety and regulation. And so we apply not only the breathing, but the touch together to enhance that sense of safety and regulation and relaxation. And you go up and you breathe in, and you go down and you breathe out. And up and you breathe in, and down and you breathe out. And you can do that through all of your fingers. We like to do that with our daughters. We'll either trace their fingers or they trace ours, and we all breathe together. There's a co-regulation that happens when you share that experience with another person. And you're mirroring each other's sense of safety and relaxation. Another thing that I'm really excited about and is working really well for our family is a really fun and neat device called the Weeby Call. And we can, what we do is we take a really deep breath in and breathe out while you loft the ball. And you try and hold that ball up aloft for about 10 seconds. So you're really inducing a slow exhalation. And that slow exhalation is really effective at regulating and bringing your body back to that parasympathetic rest, digest, thrive response, um, and that safety signal. The next part of that infinity loop was the resourcing. So those are the areas that we can independently um, optimize our own health with. And we talked about self, nutrition, activity, play, and sleep. We at We Heal, we start with self. And the reason for that is if we're not self-aware, if we are unable to self-connect, it's going to be very hard to do any of these other things in a way that's mindful and creates that sense of safety that ultimately, oh, it's called a weebie calm, and I'm gonna name that this is something that we my husband and I are a part of too, but it's a really cool and fun device. It's weebie calm, and and like I said, our family loves it. And it comes in really handy because a lot of us know how to breathe, right? In theory, we know how to breathe. But often when we get into it or when we're trying, we're so ramped up, we're so worked up. What this does, and what I love most about it, is it forces almost that really slow exhalation. And that is the key to eliciting that relaxation response. Um, so that's what I love about it. But okay, so going back to the self, if we're not self-connected, we're not going to be able to see these other facets that are needing our attention. Um, so it really starts with, even if, even if we wake up in the morning and we've got our checklist, and many of us do. I need to go to the gym, I need to make healthy food, I need to walk my dog, I need to get the kids to school, and we're checking off the boxes. I need to get to work. These are the tasks that I need to do at work, and so on and so forth. You can even hear in my voice the tension and uh the almost, there's a stress response in, I got to get everything off the list. I got to get everything off the list. So even though we're eating the healthy foods and even though we're exercising, we are not sending our body a sense of safety. We're doing just the opposite. So we're doing all the right things, and yet our body is still in that inflammatory cascade, because the intention that we're setting for ourselves as we're doing it is, I got to get this done. It's burning that candle at both ends. It's in that survival mode mentality that we are entering our daily living. And connecting to yourself gives you a moment or moments throughout the day where you can slow it down. And this, I'm not talking hours, right? I know how much we have to do in a day, and that it's not realistic to say, okay, I'm just going to, sit um and meditate for hours at a time. So this is not about that, but it is about loving and caring for ourselves moment to moment, and moments are short amounts of time. Um, it's being able to say, oh, I'm noticing my tension in my shoulders. I'm noticing that I'm breathing really shallow. I'm noticing a tightness in my stomach. My jaw is clenched. My eyes are um, intense, right? There's an intensity about me. What is happening for me? What is going on? Let me check in right now. Okay. That doesn't take too long. And the insight that you can get from that and the safety that it sends to your brain, oh, I'm taking a moment for true self-care. I'm taking a moment to connect to what am I actually feeling and needing right now. It's the antidote to artificial harmony, suppression, and repression. So much of our day when we're living in survival mode or when we're bouncing from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, is about suppression and repression. We don't even check in with ourselves to see what is the impact of my actions today. Yes, I got all of this stuff done, but what was the cost to me that I got all of that stuff done? So often we don't even get a chance to, I liken this to, I don't know if any of you have seen Runaway Bride with Julia Roberts, but there's this one classic scene in that movie where she's a bride that kind of mimics any of her beaux, right? So whoever her fiance is at the time, that's kind of the identity that she assumes. If it's a rocker, it's a rocker. If it's somebody who's more religious, she's more religious. If it's somebody who's an outdoorsy person, she's more outdoorsy. And this one scene is somebody calling her on the fact that she doesn't even know how she likes her eggs. And so you see her with plates of different types of eggs, and she's tasting them for the first time as an adult, trying to figure out, well, what do I actually like? How often do we sit with ourselves and ask ourselves, what do I actually like? What do I not like? What do I want to keep in my life? What am I ready to let go of? That is active living. That is mindful living. That is um, deliberate, intentional living. Whereas so much of living in survival mode is living on autopilot. And the cost of that, the cost of living on autopilot, living in what we call artificial harmony, which is an inability to be authentic, starting with ourselves, leads to chronic under-resourcing. Chronic under-resourcing leads to lingering stress. Lingering stress leads to disease. And this is heart disease, anxiety, depression, inflammation, obesity, reflux, gastritis, colitis, impaired immune function, decreased ability to cope, and the lack of resilience. So, how do we connect with ourselves? There are many different ways to do that. Some people do it through journaling, um, and beyond journaling, something called expressive writing. And the difference is that expressive writing is intended to release suppression and repression, to bring out things that may not be in our conscious awareness. And how it works and the reason that it works is because it's a very liberating thing that you actually don't keep if you don't want to. So you can take a piece of paper and you write for 5 minutes, anything that comes to mind. You're not worried about punctuation, about spelling, about grammar. You don't even have to worry about handwriting. Sometimes it can be completely illegible, but you're getting out thoughts that are seated deep within you. And when you're done, one, we get insight on, oh, what is really eating me up inside? What's really living there that's creating this sense of stress? And oftentimes that's the insight to why, oh, just breathing or just healthy eating, or just exercising isn't enough. Because deep, deep within is something more that I need to tend to. Maybe it's disconnection with a partner, dissatisfaction at work, trouble with a family. And so the beauty about this expressive writing is once you've done the exercise, and you can do it daily, you can do it multiple times a day, you can release that paper. Some people burn it, some people rip it up, some people shred it. It's gone. It was yours and only yours to reveal information to yourself. Feelings and needs is another really important way to connect to yourselves. It's and one of the more another one of the more insightful ways to do that. So many of us, we know when we're mad, we know when we're happy, but do we know when we're excited? Do we know when we're feeling playful? Do we know when we're feeling a desire for a need for discovery or exploration, or there are so many. One of the things that is helpful in this feelings and needs space is and needs are something that are universal. We all have needs. A lot of times in survival mode, the cost of getting all of those things done is we sacrifice our own needs. We don't connect to what we're actually needing. We use external validation, external stimuli to guide us through our day-to-day versus internally checking in to how we want to show up, what we actually want to do, what is working for us, what is not working for us. One of the biggest indicators for meeting our needs is feelings. When we have pleasant feelings, that's indicative that our needs are getting met. We're peaceful and comfortable, maybe because we're nourished, and we are feeling rested because we were able to, our need for sleep was met. We are feeling connected because our need for intimacy or relationship or friendship were met. We're feeling alive, maybe because we met our needs for discovery and curiosity. We're feeling fulfilled. Maybe we met our needs for meaning and purpose. So when we have those pleasant feelings, our needs are met. When we have unpleasant feelings, there are needs that are not met. Now, when we can connect to that, it doesn't even mean that we need to change the outcome, but we start noticing what needs of mine continually go unmet. What needs of mine do I suppress and repress? What needs of mine are so low on the totem pole that I show up out of obligation most of my life, that I build resentment toward the things that I need to do or have to get done, that I go to a space of numbness, right? That's the suppression and repression, just to be in that survival mode and get it done. So the more that we can connect to our pleasant and unpleasant feelings, the more we can use those to indicate to us, okay, the message is either, oh, things are going well, I'm having all these pleasant emotions, I'm actually meeting important needs, okay. Or I'm getting the message that there are needs that are not met. This is an opportunity to explore and dive a little deeper. What am I actually needing? And then how do I go about meeting those needs? Right. So a lot of times we live when we're in survival mode, we live on a strategy level. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And it's very binary. We either, we can, our world becomes very contracted in that survival scarcity mentality. We attach to one thing, the one outcome that we can get, right? And that could look like I am so exhausted. I'm coming home to my family and it's dinner time. I either have to make dinner or I'm not making dinner. But if I don't make dinner, what does that mean for my family? Right? It's binary versus, wait a minute, I'm exhausted and I don't feel like making dinner, but what can we do here as a family? Maybe my family can come together. Maybe everybody can do a little bit and we can get dinner. Maybe we can get dinner out. Maybe we can really do just cereal for dinner today and make it very simple because I'm tired. Whatever it is, but the strategies become expansive. We start seeing different ways to meet needs. Um, Nutrition, that's the next pillar. I love this quote because I think it's really valid. Those who think they have no time for healthy eating will sooner or later have to find time for illness. And that's the reality of it. If we don't, we go into our teens, our 20s, our 30s, thinking we're invincible, thinking we can eat whatever we want to eat, not really paying attention to healthy eating per se. And then at 40s, 50s, we get diagnosed with diabetes. We have that first heart attack. And it's like, how did I all of a sudden get diabetes? We didn't all of a sudden get diabetes. That diabetes has been festering for years. We've been really working at it. That heart attack didn't come out of nowhere. Those arteries have been clogging over many years. And not until we get to illness, for a lot of people, is that the motivation to actually make a change. Oh, it's after that first heart attack. Okay, I need to do everything I can not to get the second one. Oh, I have diabetes. I need to, now I need to be healthy. Um, and so the importance of that is to really think about, let's not wait for illness, or let's not wait for the illness to progress. We can make those changes now, and we can make them either, there are people who leap into change. There are people who make incremental changes. Either way, you're moving the dial in the direction you want to go. Our environment is no longer serving us. These are really impactful, I think, statistics. 50% of American adults have a preventable diet and lifestyle related chronic disease. Half of Americans have a preventable diet and lifestyle disease. And that's high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune conditions, and so on. Every 37 seconds, someone dies of heart disease in America. Heart disease is still our number one killer in America, despite it being linked largely to diet and lifestyle. 1 in 3 Americans born in 2000 or later will develop diabetes in their lifetime, a third of the population. Unhealthy diets are responsible for more deaths than smoking. For me, it comes down to the way that I like to talk about nutrition is not what we can or can't have. I don't I love to encourage people to focus on, what do we want to make the most of? Where do we want to put our priority? Where do we want to put the focus of our food, right? And we want to make the majority of our food the most nutritious and health promoting. What are the most nutritious and health promoting foods? There are fruits, our vegetables, our whole grains, our starchy vegetables, our legumes, and some nuts and seeds. Those are the foods that are full of vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants. Those are the full foods that reduce inflammation in our systems, enhance our immune system, and prevent and reverse disease. Those are the foods that we want to spend the majority of our time on. And in this day and age where recipes are rampant, you can find them all over. You're really limited only by your imagination as to what you want to eat and how you can make that in a healthier way. And that's the way that I like to encourage people. If you're not already on the whole food plant-based path, or you're not already incorporating the healthier foods, it's let's connect to, what do I actually like to eat? This is, again, coming back to yourself. If you are not somebody who likes to eat kale or broccoli, trying to force yourself to eat kale or broccoli is not going to be sustainably successful over life. And you don't need to eat kale or broccoli to be healthy. There are a variety of vegetables you can pick from. Pick the ones you love and eat those, in big portions and plentiful, right? I love Ethiopian food. How do I make that in a healthy way? I love burritos. How do I make the healthiest burrito I can have? I love pad thai. How do I do that in a health promoting way? And that goes back to connecting to, what do I enjoy? What do I want to eat? How do I make that in the healthiest way? That allows sustainability. And that connection to self helps embed that sense of safety. When we try and force ourselves to eat that kale and broccoli that we don't love, we're repressing, we're suppressing our own nutritional preferences. We're telling our body, don't trust yourself. Danger, 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 inflammatory cascade. So even though we're eating the healthier foods, the kale and the broccoli, there's an inflammatory cascade happening in our body because we're actually sending messages of danger. And the beauty is there are so many different varieties of foods that you can eat in so many different packages that there really is no reason to repress and suppress our personal preferences. Activity. Less than 5% of adults are physically active for 30 minutes a day. 1 in 3 children is physically active every day. 1 in 4 adults and 1 in 5 adolescents meets the physical guidelines for aerobic and muscle strengthening activities. It's about movement, not exercise. This is a really important piece. We have become a very sedentary society. And sedentary in the sense, even those people who actively exercise, formal exercise on a daily basis, how we define our activity is not what we're doing for a little bit of the time, but what we're doing for the majority of the time. And the majority of the time, most people are sedentary. They're sitting by a computer, they're sitting at a desk, they're sitting in front of a device, but they're sitting. They're not moving. In many other cultures, and also in our own ancestry, movement was what was happening on a daily basis. Movement was the ongoing thing. We didn't drive 2 minutes to the store. We walked the 3 blocks to the store. People spent time outdoors. People, uh, they agriculturally working, but we were out and about. We were moving our bodies, and that is what is important. It's fun. This is the same kind of thing, connecting to self, right? So many of us check the box. I did my 30 minutes. I did my 60 minutes, and I hated every second of it. I dragged myself to the gym every single day. You don't have to go to the gym to meet your needs for movement. You can connect to, what do I actually like to do? Oh, you know what? I love to dance. I love to ride my bike. I love to go for walks outdoors. I love yoga. Whatever it is, you can connect to that. And that, when you love it, you'll do it. And you'll do it happily, and you'll do it willingly, not out of obligation, not out of a sense of danger or consequence, right? So, as activity, what's the actual recommendation? The recommendation is really to balance aerobic, resistance, flexibility, and balance. Aerobic, so many different choices. You can run, walk, hike, dance. And the recommendation is moderate intensity, greater than 30 minutes, 5 days a week. Or vigorous intensity, greater than or equal to 20 minutes, 3 days a week. Resistance can be the same. It could be weights, it could be yoga, it could be Pilates, it could be walking. 2 to 3 days a week, 2 to 4 sets per muscle group. And resistance is important, especially as we get older, building your muscles, and strengthening your bones. Flexibility, equally important. Stretching, yoga, lunges, foam rolling, 2 to 3 times a day, or 2 to 3 days a week. Aim to stretch all your muscle groups. Stretching is really great for us to maintain our limberness and to help us prevent, as we get older, falls and as a result of decreased flexibility and balance. And balance is the same, and we can get really expansive on what that looks like. It could be standing on one leg, or alternating legs while you're brushing your teeth, or standing in line for a movie, or waiting at the supermarket. The next pillar is play. Play is a really important one that children prioritize and we as adults forget about. We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. And there's the ever youth Peter Pan. Play deprivation actually has significant costs, including emotional dysregulation, increased depression, rigidity, inflexibility, decreased adaptability, self-regulation, ability to cope, impulse control, anger management, and superficial interpersonal relationships. What is play? Play is spontaneously engaging in an activity where you're not attached to the actual outcome. You're there in the present moment, gaining joy and feeling pleasure in this playful environment. And the beauty about play is that anxiety and signals of danger can't happen while you're playing. You can't be playing and seeing the tiger. You're either playing or you're seeing the tiger. The benefits of play. And there are many. There's brain health. It improves our intelligence, our creativity, our innovation, our joy. It helps us create new connections and integrate and regulate our emotions. It improves our mood and reduces anxiety. It modifies inflammation, especially when laughter is accompanying play. Studies show that it reduces inflammation and pain in the body, decreases blood pressure, enhances our circulation, and boosts our immunity. How do we play? Many of us, there's actually a lot of play personalities. You can be a joker and tell a joke. See, this is again, not something this is not a soccer game for, a full day on Saturday, right? It could be telling a friend a joke. It could be laughing together about an experience. It could be playing a board game all together. It could be, racing with a friend as part of your activity too. So it can get really creative. It could be drawing a picture, could be coloring. It could be telling a story or writing a story. Sleep. Sleep deprivation is actually pretty rampant. More people get less than 7 to 8 hours than those that actually get 7 to 8 restful hours of sleep a night. And it affects nearly every organ in the body. It's actually linked to 7 of the 15 leading causes of death: heart disease, diabetes, infection, cancer, accidents. 5 times more depression, 2 times more medical visits and resulting hospitalizations, 4 times more accidents, and more frequent trouble with family or at work. Improving sleep is one of the most important starters. If somebody is asking me where to actually start on the infinity loop, if you're not getting 8 hours of sleep or 7 to 8 hours of sleep, I would say really look into your sleep opportunities first and foremost. And here's why. When we wake up, when we don't get a good night's sleep, we wake up tired. We are less resourced. Studies show that when we don't get enough sleep, we eat more. In fact, we eat 300 to 500 more calories a day. And the foods that we choose are the more calorie dense, unhealthy options. So sleep directly impacts any of our nutritional efforts. When we're tired, we do not feel like moving. We do not feel like getting active or going to the gym. We're not playful. And it impacts the other part of that loop. When we're tired and we're less resourced or under-resourced and we're feeling fatigue, we can come out more tense with our family and friends. We can be less effective, less productive at work. So the impacts kind of go all along that infinity loop. There are many ways to improve sleep hygiene. I wrote in a couple that really help to impact not only the quantity but the quality of sleep. Maintaining consistency is a really important one. Going to sleep and waking up at the same time, even on the weekends if possible, is really helpful. Making time to wind down. A lot of people, there's a disconnect to the fact that I have spent the whole day tense and stressed out at an 11 out of 10, totally in survival mode. And then I get into bed and I think, oh, I'm just gonna fall asleep. That stress that we've carried all day long is coming into that bed with us. So making the time to actually transition into sleep, to wind down, is really helpful in getting a good night's sleep. This is where the expressive writing that I was mentioning before can be really helpful. Another way that it's called is a brain dump, where you're really pouring everything that's in your head onto a piece of paper. You can hold on to it and put it by the nightstand so that you can refer back to it in the morning. This is a way to tell yourself, okay, I'm letting this go right now. I'm transferring it to this paper. I'm not forgetting about it. I'm going to take a look at it first thing tomorrow morning, but for right now, whew, I'm going to separate myself from all of this that's coming up for me, from all of these things that I have to do, from all of these worries that I have. So making the time for that is a really important piece in enhancing your sleep quality and quantity. Darkness is really helpful. If you can, for some people it's sleep mask, for others blackout curtains, um, black lights from the devices if you're using your devices in bed, which ideally you're not, but if you are, to really dim it to nighttime mode, and really creating that state of darkness in your room. Same thing with being cool. Our body temperature naturally drops at night, so cool rooms help that along so that we fall asleep quicker and we actually stay asleep longer. If there's a way to cease device use before bed, um, that can be really impactful too. An hour or two is ideal, but any amount of time to transition from device to sleep is helpful to improve the quantity and quality of your sleep. And then avoiding caffeine and nicotine, both of them are stimulants, and also alcohol right before bed, because it actually disrupts your deep sleep, and keeps you out of that, gives you a more superficial state of sleep through the night. If you're a napper, trying to not nap after 3 p.m. is also really helpful. So we talked about self, which is it's the opportunity for regulation. If we can regulate ourselves, we can connect to all the areas that we need to resource, which are our sleep, our nutrition, our activity, and our play. Once we come from a more resourced full battery, now we can enter into this next external connection space where we can show up intentionally, connecting to our family and friends, our work, our spirituality, however we're connected to that, and our natural world. If your body doesn't feel safe and regulated, it's much harder to meet your need for connection. Regulation and connection impact our physical biomarkers and outcomes, including cholesterol, blood sugar, chronic pain, our microbiome, and our longevity. Connection is key for safety. When we're dysregulated, disconnected, when our needs go unmet, that's a sense of threat. We get a sense of threat, a state of fight, flight, freeze, or faint, that ultimately leads to a state of chronic stress, inflammation, and that chronic inflammatory state in our systemic system leads to cardiovascular disease, cancer, autoimmune conditions, neurodegenerative disorders, viral infections. On the other side of that is in regulation, in resourcing, in meeting our needs. We send our bodies signals of safety. We decrease inflammation. We optimize immunity. We promote a state of rest, digest, reproduce, and thrive. This is a slide just showing all of the different areas that chronic inflammation impacts, from cancer to neurological diseases, to lung diseases, to bone and joint diseases, metabolic disorders, heart disease, and autoimmune conditions. Lack of connection may be in part due to not having the right people in your life to connect to, but more often it is due to not having the skills to connect with the people who are in our lives. not showing up authentically, not showing up with empathic presence, not showing up with presence at all. And it's very hard to maintain presence when we're under-resourced and living in survival mode. It's very hard to want to connect, to contribute to others when we're living in a scarcity mentality. Despite social media, despite having so many quote unquote friends, many people are feeling sad, lonely, and isolated. This is what I was talking about earlier as far as connecting to self. Sad, lonely, isolated. Those are unpleasant feelings. What are they telling us about needs that are not being met? Needs like connection, companionship, community. And loneliness, that sense of loneliness and isolation, has health risks, direct health risks, increased premature death from all causes. It's a risk similar to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. 50% increased risk of dementia, 29% increased risk of heart disease, 32% increased risk of stroke, increased depression, anxiety, suicide. This is not benign. We live in survival mode, in scarcity mentality, in a lack of connection to self. And then through that, a lack of connection to others, we live in what we call artificial harmony. We sacrifice our authenticity to maintain harmony, or sometimes we're so numbed out, we're not even connected to our authenticity. We suppress our feelings and our needs, all signals of danger. We create that artificial harmony, which leads to fight or flight. The antithesis of that is learning how to share authentically and accepting what might arise from that. That is about connecting to our needs, right? Recognizing what our feelings are telling us, how do we connect to our needs, and then what do we do in those given situations as far as what our options, what our strategies are. For example, I want, let's say you're on a nutrition plan because you want to lose weight. Losing weight is a strategy, right? What's the need? Maybe the need is for health. Maybe the need is for acceptance. Maybe the need is for self-worth, right? Once you can connect to the needs, losing weight might be one strategy, but maybe there are also others, and maybe you even connect to that desire to lose weight in a different way. The meaning behind it, the connection to it, to why this strategy is even important to you, is something that you connect to versus, and I just need to do it. I need to take out the trash. I need to, like I said, go to the gym. I need to check, 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 check. So one of the ways, and this is something that we're actually not going to get in today, but I invite you to look into on your own if it's something that if this notion of connection, of living in artificial harmony, of it resulting in that sense of loneliness and isolation, despite maybe the social media presence that we may have, or the social media connections that we may have, is nonviolent communication. And nonviolent or compassionate communication is a way of learning to connect to one another in a way that recognizes feelings and needs as messages, right? For how for what's happening for me, what's happening for somebody else. And in compassionate communication is the education on how do I connect to my needs and how do I communicate them in a way that cares for me and cares for others in my environment. And what that does is it opens up the various strategies that become available as we meet our needs. Meeting our need for health can look like changing our diet. It can look like increasing our movement. It can look like getting more sleep. It can look like getting out in nature and going camping for the weekend. All of those can meet our needs for health. Which one resonates with you most? Which one are you most likely to do? And every time we meet one of our needs, we're not only sending that sense of safety, we motivate ourselves to continue that self-care journey because it's coming from an intrinsic internal space, not an external space of what do I need to do? How do I get external acceptance? What are the external parameters for health? What are the external parameters for relationship? What are the external parameters for activity? Right? It's an internal connection. It's an internal message. It's an internal drive, an internal motivation. And that helps not only make it sustainable, but take you to that state of wonderful. When you're telling yourself, I don't need to eat the kale and broccoli. I love Brussels sprouts and cauliflower. I don't need to go to the gym for an hour. I can go dancing for that time. You're elevating your experience. You're connecting to yourself on such a deep level. You're creating that sense of safety. You're decreasing that inflammatory cascade. You're in that state of rest, digest, reproduce, and thrive. And you're elevating your experience from wellness to wonderful. Life really can become wonderful when you're finding these strategies that are actually working for you in meeting those needs that are so that are universal and that happen to be important to you at the time. I know I've said a lot, and I know that it can come out as it may feel overwhelming. Wow, there are so many things to pay attention to. Where do I start? How do I start? And that's it. That's what the beauty about it is. It's an individual journey, and it's not something that, like the infinity loop, it's something that you can start anywhere and end up anywhere, right? So if you take the idea behind the 9 pillars is for you to take inventory, for you to start with a self-connect, see where am I thriving? What areas of my life are actually thriving right now? What areas need a little bit more attention? And in the areas that need a little bit more attention, that's where you're going to go to at that particular time. And that's going to change, right? We talked about connection in the form of family and friends. Work is another area of connection. It's an area that meets our needs for meaning and purpose. How do we derive meaning and purpose? And here's another example. Maybe some of us are in jobs that don't meet that need for meaning and purpose. Does that mean that our needs for meaning and purpose can't be met? No. Work is one strategy for meeting needs for meaning and purpose. It's not the only strategy for meeting needs for meaning and purpose. We can volunteer somewhere. We can have a creative outlet that brings us meaning and purpose. Though once we can identify what's my actual need, then I can start getting very clear on what are the strategies to meet them. Spirituality is the same. Some of us turn to the strategy of religion, some to mindfulness and meditation, some to being in the natural world. Right? Those become the strategies when when we recognize a need to connect to something greater than ourselves, to have a sense of interdependence. And that's how, if we are consciously taking inventory, and that starts with a self, then we're naturally going to be connecting to these pillars with not very much active work. It may take time for this shift to happen. It may take time. It's like learning a new language. Whenever you're starting something new, it's going to take time. It's going to take time to learn the lingo. It's going to take time. Connecting to needs is something that, although it sounds like it's a pretty basic, easy, simple thing. Oh, we all have universal needs. I can connect to my needs and values. It's surprising once you start on that journey, the discovery of, wow, I haven't been connected to my needs. I've been running on autopilot. I've been so deep in survival mode. I've been feeling so burnt out and disconnected. I haven't been present for I don't know how long. You become that person testing the plates to see, what flavors you actually like. Connecting to what activity I actually want to do. How do I want to transition into my state of sleep? How do I want to talk to my family and friends? How do I want to show up for them? Do I really want to go to this party? Do I really want to go to that family gathering? And if I don't, can I communicate that in a way that cares for myself and for others? Or do I go out of obligation? Do I suppress, repress? We have that fork in the road, the opportunity for life to be pretty contracted or life to be pretty expansive. It starts with a self and that self connection. Um, so how we turn it around is we really spend time in that self space, connecting and identifying the threats your body is experiencing. Where am I sensing danger? Where am I suppressing? Where am I repressing? Where am I doing so much out of obligation and resentment? And then how do I regulate? That's the number one. When we're regulated in ourself, then we can start looking at all of the other areas. Then we open up the space to even pay attention to what else is going on. We pull ourselves out of fight, flight, freeze, or faint by taking that moment to self-regulate, to slow it down. And it doesn't have to be by hours, it can be by seconds or minutes. And that really decreases mobilization. It more readily sets the safety brake that gives us those messages of safety, that breaks the inflammatory cascade that's in our bodies, that promotes the healing, rest, digest, thrive. In our regulation, we can start paying attention to where we have opportunities to resource. How's my sleep? How's my nutrition? How's my activity? And not so much, have I played today? If I haven't, how would I enjoy playing? And again, not for a long amount of time. And it could be merged together. Maybe I'm going to play with a new recipe and see what happens. Maybe I'm going to play with whatever activity I choose. Maybe I'm going to do Zumba today. Maybe I'm going to go for that walk outside because it's so beautiful. So we can mix them together, right? And in that resourcing, once we are regulated and resourced, now we can connect to our external world. We can show up as we desire with that intention that we desire to connect to our family and friends, to show up at work with whatever our goals are for our work, to connect to an interdependence that's greater to ourselves. And it could manifest as spirituality or something else for you. And to find time, to find space to appreciate and or experience our natural world. And that can get expansive too. Do we need to actually be out in nature? Yes, that's super beneficial. But can we have pictures of nature in our home? Can we have plants? Yes, that's another way to experience nature if you can't get outdoors. So that's the ability to connect to what is the need that I want, and then how do I go about attaining that in a way that feels good for me, and when it involves others, can feel good for them too. It's about awareness, not perfection. As we go, as we learn a new language, we're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna have bumps in the road. And I love those because they're learning opportunities. And how you're going to know about them is you're going to have the unpleasant feelings that are going to tell you, wait a minute, that's not working for me. That's not working for me is the fork in the road. Do I want it to continue to not work for me, suppress, repress, come out of obligation, resentment, and numb myself out and just do it anyway? Or do I have an opportunity to look at it differently and explore it in a different light? So connecting to ourselves, noticing our pleasant and unpleasant feelings, recognizing the needs driving those feelings. And one of the best ways to learn this, if you're interested, is we have on We Heal a feelings and needs chart. If you go to our resources and our connection resources, there's an abbreviated and a long list of feelings and needs. But they're all over the internet. You can find them and print it out. Print several of them out. Put them around the house. Carry them in your pocket. And when you're starting to feel those unpleasant feelings, pull it out. Start getting familiar with the vocabulary of needs, recognizing the needs driving your feelings, and then exploring the strategies that could meet those needs. The idea is to get curious, get creative, get expansive, pull out of scarcity mentality, pull out of survival mode. And that's the path to take yourself from illness to wellness to wonderful. So I'm going to stop sharing and open up for questions if anybody has them.
Great. Thank you so much, Doctor, for that presentation. So we're going to officially begin the Q&A portion. And just real quickly, though, how would everyone get in touch with you if they'd like to follow your work, and how would they get your books?
Yeah. So, Wellness to Wonderful, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it on our site, which is weheal.health, WEHEAL.health. And that's a way also to connect to me or my partner, Matthew Letterman.
Okay, great. So if you want to see what books that they have it there, you can go check out our bookstore, and then you can buy it at We Heal, and you can buy it I'm sure on Amazon as well.
Mhm.
So all right, great. So we're going to officially begin the Q&A portion. For the audience, if you'd like to ask a question, you can please raise your hand in Zoom. The instructions for how to do so are in the chat. We don't take questions directly from the chat, so if you could raise your hand, that'd be greatly appreciated. So So I'm gonna go ahead and start asking the question. So what inspired you to write this wellness book after the success of your film, Forks Over Knives?
Yeah, I think one of there are many, many, many things that I love about my partnership with my husband. But one of them is we are regularly seeking and looking to learn. Um, that is part of our ethos. That self-inventory and that check-in and holding each other accountable for living our best lives. And this book came out of really connecting to the fact that we are we're doing a lot of things really well and we're still not living our best lives. So what are our additional opportunities? And one of the things that we connected to in that is that, there are very sleep, nutrition, and activity are things that most people know to hone and optimize when they're trying to optimize their health. But those other pieces, that self connection, play, the ability to resource and regulate first, and how that impacts our connection to our external world, our family, our friends, our work, how we perceive our meaning and purpose, um, how we connect to being not alone and isolated and small, but connect interdependent in our natural world and that realm of spirituality, however it manifests for people. So that was what came out of like, where are we still missing things?
Okay. And just out of curiosity, what was your involvement in the film Forks Over Knives?
Yeah, so my husband and I had a clinic at the time that was using nutrition and lifestyle medicine to prevent and reverse disease. And so in the film Forks Over Knives, my husband is in it for the most part, working with the patients in that documentary.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, and just as a side note, that was actually the first film that I had seen or anything that really got me inspired to go down this path myself. So thank you
Okay.
for what you guys did. So,
Oh.
I know you tackled this in your presentation, but what does wellness to wonderful mean?
Yeah, so for me, wellness has kind of become ubiquitous and almost like something that we don't even understand anymore. We say it almost in that automatic autopilot. How are you doing? I'm well. How are you doing? I'm fine. I'm good. But that no longer has like that has become a normalized state that still contains a whole lot of sickness. I'm well with autoimmune disease that's flaring, with diabetes that's out of control, with a heart attack that I just had last week, but I'm well now, right? So taking or you maybe your health is optimized, but emotionally you're still feeling lonely, you're still feeling isolated, you're not connected to your family and friends, you're in the way that you would like. You're not finding your meaning and purpose at work or in other facets of your life, right? So even though maybe physically you're well, emotionally and mentally you're not. And so the idea of elevating your experience, taking it from that wellness to wonderful, life is wonderful is a place where you can say, you know what? Life is going to have ups and downs. It's not about being happy all the time, but I know what I need to do in this space to get myself to live my best life. And maybe there are times where I can't tend to it as I would like, but I'm aware. I have the resilience, the cognition, the ability to cope with the downs. I know how to get back to the ups. It's you're no longer on autopilot. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, wellness, I guess, you're saying like, how you doing? I'm well, is almost like saying, can't complain,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to really feeling a vibrance inside you. So, can you explain your definition of wonderful and how it differs from the typical definition of physical health?
Yeah. So it's not limited to just physical health. The state of wonderful is really a space where You're not just physically healthy, but physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically. Like, and it's not about being happy all the time, but it's about being resilient. It's about being present. It's about being self-connected so that you are aware of what um you're aware of the life that you're actually living. You're not in that state of numbing autopilot survival mode. Your life feels expansive because even if maybe my nutrition isn't optimized right now, but I know what I could do to get there. And I'm going to pay that attention. I have a plan, right? So
Mhm.
you feel resilient, you feel um, vibrant, you feel present in the moment to your experiences and an advocate of the choices that you're making for yourself.
Okay.
Versus in survival mode, oftentimes we succumb to our environment. We lose that power, we relinquish that autonomy and that agency and advocacy for ourselves.
Thank you. So, what are some key takeaways that you really just can expect to gain from your book?
So there are a number of them. One is obviously in more detail, why the pillars are important and then how to go about navigating them and paying them the attention that you would like. Um, and then there are some practical, I like how to put in practice. In theory, it's great. It sounds great in theory, but how do I actually implement it? So um, one of the things that's helpful in the book is there are a lot of practical applications for how this actually plays out in your life. How does it show up? I have two daughters, a 10 and a 12-year-old, and they appear a lot in the book as we navigate our family dynamics in all of those different pillars to demonstrate how it can get done and where we fall short and need reminders on a regular basis and what we do to kind of bring ourselves back to that elevated state.
So, there's obviously a lot of books on wellness and nutrition out there. What sets this book apart from other wellness and nutrition books on the market?
Yeah, well, I haven't read every single one, so I can't speak to all of them, but it doesn't silo, which is what I like. A lot of times what happens is we have so much information out there, but this is a book about nutrition, and this is a book about activity, and this is a book about mindfulness, and this is a book about sleep. And how do you integrate all of those? It becomes, like a jigsaw puzzle. Like, how do I take this and this and this? And there's a whole book on play. But how do I take all these and actually integrate them into my daily living? And what Wellness to Wonderful aims to do is really allow you to see how those 9 pillars integrate into your day to day. And it does a lot of the integration for you.
Thank you. So, we're going to take an audience question. MR, please state where you're from and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. I'm from California. This has been so helpful and fascinating. My question is about the fight, flight, freeze, faint. Could you please talk a little bit about the faint response? I've not heard of that before. I've heard of fawn, but not faint. Thank you.
Yeah. So when you think of animals in nature, right, they will fight, they will flee. If they're captured, they will fight. And at that point where they realize nothing's going to help, there's a freezing, almost fainting. So you don't experience the pain, you almost knock out. And we do that too. We become the way that it manifests in our lives is paralysis. A lot of times we're paralyzed to make change. We're paralyzed to take accountability or to take self-inventory. We go into that state of it's almost like a numb autopilot state. where we're not actively aware or present to our experiences. It's like if you've ever, I imagine many of us will have that experience where you're driving to a familiar place and you get there and say, did I run a red light? Was I present to this? Like I got here, but wait a minute. Did I remember how I did that? No, because we're not conscious to our moment to moment experience. We're checked out.
Thank you. Just on the faint thing, and just out of curiosity, you often see like in a movie, someone gets scared and they faint. Is that a real, like, is that a real response? Is that a common response? It's always kind of played off as comical. Is that a response from, I
You
don't know
can
if you
have
know.
you can have that vasovagal, where you're just so stressed out, everything goes internal that and you can drop. I When I say freeze faint, it doesn't necessarily have to be a literal
Okay.
fainting, more of like I'm completely checked out. Like freezing, you're still there, you're aware, right? You're maybe physically frozen. Faint, it's almost like your whole mental, emotional, and physical state is checked out.
So almost like a shock response where you're just,
Yeah.
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 So, in terms of diet, how can people transition to a plant-based diet, and what challenges do people face when adopting that lifestyle? I'm going to ask you a few here. And how can the book help them overcome those challenges?
Yeah. So one of the benefits of wellness to wonderful is identifying that nutrition is not the whole picture, right? Nutrition is a super important component for our health and wellness. But, and that was one of the things that I talked about. If you're looking at your pillars, if I'm not sleeping, the chances that I'm going to be successful in my nutritional world uh, go down, they decrease. Because statistically, if I'm regularly not sleeping, if I'm sleep deprived, studies consistently show I will be eating more. I will be eating 300 to 500 more calories a day. Those foods will be more calorie dense and less health promoting. So I will fight tooth and nail, use willpower to try and stay on track. But I'm tired. My body is working against me. My signals of danger are working against me. My inflammatory cascade, all of that is working against me despite my efforts to make nutrition lifestyle changes. Same thing happens if we are not finding meaning and purpose at work. And we are also not identifying to that fact that we don't have meaning and purpose in our work, but we're also, in not identifying, we're not finding it elsewhere. We're walking around with a void of meaning and purpose. It's going to be it is subconsciously hard to want to motivate around health and eating. We want comfort in that state. That's a need not met. That's a really important need not met. We're not recognizing it, but we feel dissatisfaction. We feel unsettled, resulting in or manifesting in cravings and either the implementation of willpower, which we know ultimately fails. We cannot rely on willpower long term. So ultimately that's going to fail. We're going to give in. We're not even cognitive of the fact that that doesn't come from what we ate or didn't eat. It comes from the fact that we're not meeting needs for meaning and purpose. When we're disconnected from our families, when we're arguing with a partner or having disconnection with our children, and we feel depleted and we feel exhausted and we're under resourced, I don't want the carrots and hummus. I want the peanut butter and cookies, right? That's a natural drive that we have for comfort. And so if we're not connected to the source, right? Then the nutrition, it becomes an uphill battle, and for many of us, an unsuccessful one.
Thank you. And how do you address the concern that the vegan diet doesn't have adequate nutrition, such as protein and other essential nutrients?
Yeah, well, I can't get into all of that now, but the book does address that.
Mm.
Uh, what I can tell you from all of my years of experience, just in a nutshell, if you are on a whole food plant-based diet, studies consistently show, and this is something that can be easily found on the internet. Studies consistently show that you will meet your needs for protein, all of your essential amino acids, essential fatty acids, um, and those are the foods that provide you the health promoting vitamins, minerals, nutrients, phytochemicals, antioxidants. They're the richest nutrient dense foods that we have, short of B12, which is something that if you are 100% plant-based, that is something that you want to supplement. Now, having said that, vegan and whole food plant-based, very different. So you can be a vegan choosing, unhealthy processed foods, foods high in salt, fat, sugar, oil, um, isolated proteins, and so forth, that are not health promoting. So I like to distinguish that. Whole food plant-based diet, healthiest diet. I know the foods that are the most health promoting for our systems, different from being on a vegan diet.
So, what led you to focus on the importance of authentic connection with family, friends, colleagues, spirit, and the natural world in achieving wellness?
Yeah. So there's a cost, right? We go on autopilot. We live in artificial harmony. We maintain that superficial sense. But what we're really telling ourselves is, I can't show up authentically. It's dangerous for me to show up authentically. I don't have a space where I can be me and accepted, meet my needs for acceptance. I have to hide behind a facade to meet that need. That is a message of danger. Ongoing messages of danger subconsciously create an inflammatory cascade in our body, long-term inflammatory cascade in our body, um, and that whole sympathetic fight flight response leads to chronic disease. So we're working so hard to optimize our nutrition. We're working so hard to optimize our activity and our sleep, and yet we're creating this inflammatory cascade in these other areas of our lives. And one of the contributors to that is not showing up authentically. Now, showing up authentically can be done. It's scary, right? Because again, a lot of times we, a lot of times authenticity shows up when we've been pushed too far, when we've had enough. And then that authenticity comes out as anger, as resentment. But it doesn't have to be that way. If you can, that was one of the things that I was mentioning. If you can connect to your core needs, you can show up in a way that is authentic, cares for your needs and for somebody else's needs. For example, I have a um, I have a date with a friend tomorrow night to go to the movies. And we've been planning this for a while, but you know what? I am just exhausted. I don't feel like going to the movies. Is it I don't go to the movies or I do go to the movies? Or can I connect with my friend and share, hey, you know what? I care so much about you and spending time together. I don't feel like going to the movies. But would you like to come over and we can order in and just relax at my house? You see what I'm saying? Like all of a sudden you have all these, or can we take a rain check and do it another night? Or can you think of something else that we could do that maybe fits the bill a little bit better? And you guys um, you connect with someone else on coming up with strategies that work for both of you. So that is a way to connect authentically. I don't like it when you didn't take out the trash today. I don't like it when the house smells or whatever it is. What am I needing? I have a need for order. I have a need for ease. I have a need for contribution. I have a need for mutuality. Can I express that? without attaching to what the strategy is, whether it's taking out the trash or doing the dishes or making the dinner or whatever that is. Once I can connect to the need, once I can share the need, whoever it is that I'm communicating with, we can strategize together. And it's amazing, just like on a plant-based diet, getting creative around what the foods you can eat are. It's amazing how you can get creative and expansive around strategies that can meet needs.
Well, just as a follow-up, do you find that people, when they get focused on that specific strategy as opposed to their need, they end up getting bogged down and it causes conflict because they can't articulate themselves?
I will tell you that 99.99999% of conflict lives in the strategy zone.
I'm thinking
Because
about conflicts in my own life, but within
yeah,
this.
we're attached to the outcome. It's about doing it this way or doing it that way, doing it this way, or, like here's another one, social media with children, right? Is it about they are on social media, they're not on social media, or they are only for 30 minutes or not at all? You know what I mean? Or is it sitting down with your child and saying, hey, these are my needs. This is what I'm worried about. This is what I'm needing for you. What's on the table for you? What are your needs? A lot of times, what comes out is we share needs. Our strategies to meet them have been different, but we share needs for health. We share needs for rest. We share needs for creativity and discovery. We share needs for exploration. We share needs for contribution and mutuality and so on and so forth. Can we find a way, whether it's social media, work, relationships, nutrition, activity, can we find a way to strategize to meet all the needs on the table? But that only happens if we can connect to them in the first place.
By understanding ourselves, essentially.
By understanding ourselves and getting curious, if we're interacting with somebody else, getting curious around what's up for them too. What are their needs? What are the needs on the table for them?
So, how do you measure the impact of these connections on overall wellness?
Yeah. So I gave the statistics around loneliness. Statistics around connection are ample as well. Everything from increasing diabetes, lack of connection, disconnection, leading to increasing diabetes, increasing cholesterol, increasing heart disease, increasing inflammation in the body, decreasing immune function. It's significant. There are studies that show even just the empathic presence of a doctor in a patient visit can decrease by, I don't remember the exact statistics, but significant, like 40% as far as blood sugars, cholesterol levels. I mean, really impactful changes just from a doctor showing you they actually care. And to me, it's kind of funny because if we think about it, about health and whole foods and plant-based diets, Hippocrates said it so many years ago to put medicine away. There's that old adage, they don't want to know how much you care until they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Well, now it's beyond just knowing how much you care. It really impacts our physical well-being and contributes and promotes health over disease.
So many people look for a silver bullet, the one thing that will solve it all. What is your silver bullet?
Self. It's yourself. It really starts with you. You are your own silver bullet. And a lot of people don't like to hear that because they want just the pill, the quick fix, the pill and the procedure. But if the pill and the procedure and the quick fix worked, we wouldn't be looking for the next silver bullet. We would have already had it and been satisfied. We're constantly looking for that silver bullet because it doesn't exist. Even those things that we think are the silver bullet, we later find out that wasn't it. So for me, it's starting with yourself. It's connecting to your needs, your feelings, allowing those messages to come in and letting them guide you around what your next steps are for you.
Thank you. So what are your future plans for promoting plant-based nutrition and wellness?
Oh, that lives in my core. I'm never gonna stop. So at We Heal, we see patients individually. We also run classes on health and wellness, on nutrition and the 9 pillars and connection. And um, yeah, it will live as a personal and professional challenge for life.
Thank you. So to go back to self, we live in a culture that celebrates individualism so much and teaches us to be very self-focused, verging on selfish. In that context, why are we so unable to connect with ourself when and does our culture teach us to focus on an unhealthy version of ourselves? I think you kind of went over this a little earlier in your presentation.
A lot of the encouragement that happens is external validation and still doing. It's not it's still at that strategy level. Taking care of yourself, what you do for yourself, right? Not what are my actual needs. Because when we connect to our needs, we don't just connect to the personal things that are important to us, we connect to our need for mutuality. We connect to our need for contribution. We connect to our need for respect and care for others. We connect to our need for interdependence. What happens in that in the realm of self-care in doing, we are in survival mode. We are in scarcity mentality. We are in a me, right? Getting down to those needs connects us to it's an it's an us. It's not just a me. And for me to thrive, it can't just be me.
So, in your experience, what are the most common misconceptions of plant-based diet that you encounter?
Oh, I think you name them. It won't taste good. It's only steamed rice and vegetables or salads all day. How do I get my protein? How do I get my calcium? Uh, what about my muscles? And so forth.
Because we might as well throw in, it's so expensive, as if
Yes,
rice and
it's very
beans are
expensive.
somehow more expensive than beef.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
so, with regard to connection, which is a huge part of your focus and the way that you presented today, um, how do you see the new generation, which is the first generation that grew up without ever knowing a time without social media and cell phones to refocus our connections through these devices, so that when they say they're connected through these devices and not to other human beings directly. How do you think that's going to impact this future generation, and what do you think we're going to look like in a few years as these people grow up? And I know that's a philosophical conversation, but
It's a tough one and one I grapple with personally, having 2 daughters in the 10 and 12 age. Yeah, I don't I don't know what the answer is for that. I think it really depends. We have an opportunity, and I think and a responsibility to allow that younger generation, to teach that younger generation to also connect to a needs-based consciousness and a mutuality and an interdependence and a care and consideration and respect and kindness, and and in that identify their internal values. So much of social media pulls you out of your internal values to your external world. How do my Facebook facade, or, my Instagram live, or this filter or that filter, or how do I match up to this or that? It's so externally driven that there's a disconnection and a dissociation almost from our internal selves. And I think we have an opportunity to help our younger generation reconnect internally so that they're checking in, not just checking out also. And I think if we can do that, it's I don't know that social media is necessarily all evil, right? So it's more how we use it. What's the intention? What are we doing with it? And how is that impacting us? And if we're connected and grounded to our internal needs, our internal values, then social media is something we can use to promote those. I don't see that, and that's a possible avenue that kind of isn't completely becoming immersed in it, but also not completely, or consumed by it, but also not completely avoiding it.
Thank you. So, and we've got just a minute left, and I just want to ask you hopefully a smaller question. You use a very interesting term, empathic presence. How exactly what does that mean as opposed to just being there? What makes it empathic presence instead of just presence?
Yeah, so in empathy, we are completely we completely enter our own situation. We completely enter that present moment, and we're distractionless around, we're not attached to any outcome. A lot of times, even if we're present, we're still attached to outcomes. We're still living in a strategy mode. We're still thinking about the future or the past. In an empathic presence, it's about really being in the moment, connecting to feelings and needs, connecting to what is coming up in that particular moment. If you're offering empathy for someone else, it's not sympathy, it's not advice, it's not trying to fix their problem. It's sitting in that space, even if it's really uncomfortable, and exploring that moment. It's being alive to whatever that may be.
Great. Dr. Pulde, thank you so much for your time. Really greatly appreciate it. If we can unmute the audience so they can show their appreciation, please.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.